Today, we're diving into a story from the world of online gaming, where some virtual promises ended up having some very real and very expensive consequences. Let's get right into it.
And this whole situation really boils down to one central question. What happens when the people making a game break their promises, especially when their players have actual money at stake?
All right, so to really get what was at stake here, you first have to understand the game at the heart of this whole mess, Entropia Universe.
See, Entropia Universe isn't your typical online game. It runs on something called a real cash economy. Its in-game money, called PED, is permanently pegged to the US dollar at a fixed 10-to-1 rate, and that one simple fact changes everything. It means every item, every investment, every single transaction inside this virtual world has a direct, real-world cash value.
So, keeping that real money economy in mind, let's wind the clock back to 2014. For the players of Entropia, this was a time of huge optimism and excitement.
The developer's CEO, David Simmons, came out with this huge announcement. He promised a whole new era of transparency, saying, MindArc has made a decision to be more active in sharing its future development plans, and the sharing starts now. For a community that often felt like they were left in the dark, this was a massive deal.
And they didn't just talk the talk, they backed it up with this incredibly ambitious roadmap. We're talking a new creature control system, a complete overhaul of taming, PvP improvements, battle arenas, and they even gave target dates. For the players, it seriously looked like the game was about to hit a golden age.
But that golden age never really arrived. You fast forward just 2 years to 2016, and all of that initial excitement had pretty much curdled into deep, deep suspicion.
By this point, the community forums were just on fire with one really anxious question. Were players' investments in Entropia being used to fund a completely different game? They could feel that development on the main game had basically ground to a halt, and they started connecting the dots to a new mobile spin-off called Compet.
And this created this huge disconnect. Officially, MindArc was saying that Compet, their new mobile game, was a totally separate project funded by its own shares, or deeds. But what players were actually experiencing was a total freeze in development on the main game. The fear was that their money was being secretly siphoned off to build this other project.
This feeling of betrayal was just perfectly captured by a forum user named Svarog. He wrote that players who bought the new deeds had hammered the nails in EU's coffin with their own hands. Or even worse, that the funds were coming directly from our deposits. I mean, that's a powerful statement from a community that really felt its investment was being betrayed.
So what ended up happening to the super controversial spin-off? Let's jump ahead to 2018 for the moment of truth.
In 2018, it finally became official. MindArc suspended development of Compet. The reason? The current model was not sustainable. For the players who had been sounding the alarm for 2 long years, it was a bitter vindication. Their fears had been right all along. So MindArc offered a solution for the players who'd invested in Compet. The plan seemed simple enough on paper. Players could exchange 5 Compet deeds for 2 deeds in another asset, called Arcadia Moon Deeds. All they had to do was visit a specific character, an NPC, in one of 2 major cities. Seemed easy, right? Well, what should have been a simple fix for investors turned into an absolute masterclass in how not to communicate with your player base. A YouTuber named Serial Overdrive, who documented his whole frustrating experience, put it pretty bluntly. This is sort of like the shittiest way they could screw people over. Because when he and countless others followed the official instructions, they found nothing. And here's why. The plan was clear. The exchange NPC would be on the main planet, Calypso. But the reality? That character had been moved to an entirely different planet, Planet Arcadia, with absolutely no major announcement about the change. So where exactly was this critical piece of information shared? Not in the main game launcher. Nope, not even on the Planet Arcadia launcher where the NPC actually was. It was buried. A single non-bolded sentence was added to the bottom of the original web post, almost like a footnote. It just said, "Update, the transfer NPC has been relocated." That's it.
So what does all of this add up to? Well, it becomes a pretty serious cautionary tale, and not just for gamers.
At the end of the day, this story isn't just about a failed spin-off. It's about the complete and total breakdown of trust between a developer and a community that had real, hard-earned money on the line.
And this brings the entire story of broken trust full circle. It all started back in 2014 with that CEO promising a new era of openness. It ends in 2018 with a player looking back at that exact promise and saying, simply, "Honestly, this is bullshit." The contrast is just stark.
And it all leaves us with one big, lingering question. As our digital lives and our financial lives become more and more intertwined in these virtual worlds with very real economies, who is it that ultimately bears the real risk?